Welcome back, everybody. This is Tom from LeanMusing.com, and we're going to continue on today in our series Learning to See. And this video is going to cover the next letter in the acronym Tim Wood, which is inventory. In our last video, we talked about transportation, and in the video before that, we just gave an overview of Learning to See. So let's get right into it. So inventory is a huge waste that many companies have everywhere. I've been in factories where they literally line the walls with inventory. They're stacked to the ceiling, and it's not only a safety hazard, but it constricts you, and you have all these things that you cannot do just because you have so much inventory. Now, let's envision it a little bit. When I think of inventory, I think of pallets of parts laying around a factory. They might be finished goods, they might be in WIP, but they're pallets of parts that have not yet been purchased. Now, inventory, if you were to talk about this with a Japanese consultant, he might point this out and say sleeping money, which is a really cool concept when I think about it, because if you were to look at a pile of inventory, you might as well take a wad of cash, throw it on the pallet instead of the parts, and say you can't spend that money until someone says, I want to buy those parts. Because that's really what you're doing if you build inventory that you don't have demand for. And of course, I understand some business models require inventory, especially fast response, same day shipping type of product. Anything like, I think Rubbermaid, right? They're definitely something that they have a lot of inventory. I'm sure that they can fulfill orders real quick. But let's make sure that we're considering this from a typical business that does not need all that finished good work. So again, we're talking about sleeping money and what is the effect and negative impact that has on your business. Well, to start off, if you have money tied up in inventory, what can you not do? You cannot invest, or you cannot invest that money back into your company. You cannot get new equipment that you might not have the money for because you have so much money tied up in that inventory. Again, you paid for that labor, you paid for the energy that maybe baked the part or hardened the part or cured the part or whatever you need to do to the part. And the material and labor, that's just a ton of money. So when we look at this, you have to consider everything that really goes into it. Another problem is inventory takes up a lot of floor space in most cases, especially if you're making a ton of parts. And a lot of factories have problems where they're space constrained to begin with. So obviously you want to make sure that you keep as much space open as you can. Some companies go to the point where they get outside warehouses to hold inventory. And now you're paying for space that you're not even using for anything related to making the product, which is completely non-value added when you look at this in the spectrum of producing parts that the customer wants. So those are a couple things that come to mind right away. The next thing that I'd like to bring up is I've seen inventory stacked to the ceiling, which in my mind is a huge safety hazard. And if that were to fall over, someone were to bump into it, whatever it might be, you have a huge accident on your hands, or potential for that to happen. So just another aside, I always want to make sure that we include the safety aspect to these wastes. And then, of course, you have what we know as obsolescence occurring in parts that might sit on the racks for years. Parts rust, certain product that you might make with a mix can go bad. You might, if you do liquids, it could be separation. All these things that can go wrong. And if you lose something that's been sitting on your racks for years, excuse me, especially something like finished goods, you're talking about all that time, money, energy, materials, etc. put into that part, gone. You're not getting it back. You spent that money, and you might as well have burned the dollar bills. In fact, it would have been more efficient to burn the dollar bills because you wouldn't have wasted all the space for years that you could have used for something else. So you have to look at inventory in that way. And again, I'll just mention that some companies need to have some level of inventory, and that's fine, but you need to define it and you need to stick to that, because that is going to make a huge impact on your business, especially day-to-day operations. A lot of inventory can cause sorting, it can cause excess transportation, which we talked about in the last video, so I'm not going to get into that, but it can cause a lot of other waste. So all of this stuff comes out to say that it's a huge waste, and you want to avoid it at all possible avenues. Now, there's another type of whip that I haven't really touched too much. We were talking about whips sitting on racks here or there, and I would say that there's also and this could be the same thing depending on the part of the process that you're in, but there's of course the inventory known as WIP, work in process. And work in process, if you have a lot of WIP in your system, you're going to have problems with your lead time and your responsiveness. I used to work with a guy who told me that lead time and WIP are joined at the hip. And it took me a really long time to appreciate that. It must have been years into doing lean activities where I finally realized that, man, he was right. I mean, I was just thinking about what he said. He was spot on. I mean, as we cut down the inventory, our product flows through quicker, we're batching less, and all these great things seem to start to fall into place. Not to mention, our inventory dropped. And of course, I think every financial guy out there would love to hear that his company's turns went up. So anyway, I think that's about it for inventory for this video. Hopefully everybody enjoyed that. Be sure to comment on this if you've got anything to add. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. But next video we're going to get into motion, which is next on the acronym list, and I will see you all then.